Okay, today is Sunday, March 8th. We're going to look at price the 13-week and the 30-week moving average for 8 stocks. But before we do that, we're going to look at the trend score from March 6th, the close of Friday. We had 4 or 5. Trend scores of 4 to 5, 19.53%. Trend scores of 2 to 3, 49.61%. And 0 to 1, 30.86%. Our market condition was bearish and fully aligned. We only had 6.05% of all the stocks in the major indexes, which would be the SPY, the Dow Jones, and the Qs. Only 6.05% of them were fully aligned. And what that means is if we go to the stocks here, so if it's above each one of these moving average, it gets a trend score of 5. If it's missing one, like if this one was below but the other 4, it would get a trend score of 5. Fully aligned means they're in the right order. So only 6.05%. And before we go on to our weekly moving average tab and look at the 8 stocks, I just want to point out that the futures don't look good for tomorrow, March 9th. So that's something to keep in mind. These are ideas, but just tread carefully. We'll start with Albemarle. We actually want to start on the 13-week. So I want the 13-week to be above the 30-week, and I want them to be in an uptrend, and I want them to be as tight as possible to the 13-week. So we're looking for opportunities. I'm mainly going to focus on the 1-year chart here, but we have a 3, 5, and 10-year chart, and our high and low for the 52-week are based on the weekly time frame. So these are Friday closes. During the week, they may have reached a higher high, and they also may have reached a lower low. We have market cap, we have uptrend, downtrend, or neutral, and then the 8 weeks prior to this week, were they above their moving average or not? And yes, this one was, so it's pulled back tight. So for the last 8 weeks since January 9th, Albemarle has been above its 13-week moving average, and right now it's 0.65% above it. And then if we move on to the 30-week, we are 30.49% above it. Now the 30-week is the next line of defense if the 13-week was to roll. And what I mean by roll is start to curl and go downward. Right now it's in an uptrend. If we broke the 13-week and it started to roll, then the 30-week would become our next line of defense. The next stock on our 30-week, 30.49%. The next stock we're going to look at here, and it's just going to be these stocks right here, is ticker ALGN. .89% above its 13-week. We're in an uptrend, 205.56 for a 52-week high, 125.79 for a 52-week low. The 8 weeks prior to this week's close, we were in an uptrend on the 13-week, and on the 30-week, we were also in an above our moving average. So the next stock we will look at here will be, and we can see this one's just starting to break out. And it's not as strong because on our 30-week, we're only 13.86% above the 30-week moving average, where with Albemarle, we were much higher. 13-week for the EME will be our next stock. Okay, this is 1.17% above the 13-week and an uptrend. The 8 weeks prior to this week, we've been above the moving average, 812.79 for a 52-week high, 342.02 for a 52-week low. You can see the 1-year chart we broke here, and this is what I mean by break, but it stays in an uptrend or sideways, and this may have curled a little bit, but then it came right back up. So these kind of can be shakeouts here, so you got to be careful not to just... For me, I don't like to just sell out if it falls just a little below the line. It needs to really maybe 5-10%, below the 13-week if I'm trading the 13-week. On the 30-week, we're only 6.12% above that, and these all were above the 30-week for the last 8 weeks prior to this week, and we're still in an uptrend. If we go on to Fabrinet, FN. This is just below the 13-week, and it was below the 13-week 9 weeks ago on January 9th. But it's just barely below. If this goes up 0.33%, we'll be above the 13-week. And you can see we've held the 13-week for the most part. Even when it was below here, it was barely below. It's probably right around this time frame here. If we look at the 546.13 for a high, 171.03 for a low over the last 52 weeks. If we look at the 30 week, we're 12.95% above that in an uptrend, and we've been above that the prior 8 weeks before this week. The next stock we'll look at here will be Micron. So Micron is above 3.60% above the 13-week. You see, for most of the year, it's held the 13-week, so this could be an opportunity. However, we are in shaky markets right now because of the conflict going on. 52-week high, 428.17. 52-week low, 64.72. It's in an uptrend. We've been above the moving average for the 8 weeks prior to this week and this week. So for the last 9 weeks, if we look at the 30-week, this is a strong stock because we're so far above the 30-week. And you can see this has been well above the 30-week for a while now. 42.54% above the 30-week. The next stock we will look at here will be PCAR. And we're just using technical analysis, nothing else. Do your research, check earnings, things like that, balance sheets. This is just technicals. We want to be in stocks that institutions are following. We're 0.30% above the 13-week moving average, 128.46 for a 52-week high, and the current price is 120.43. So this could be considered resistance because we got there and now we're getting rejected at that level. But we have been above the moving average for the last 8 weeks before this week. We're in an uptrend, and if we look at the 30-week, it's only 10.84% above the 30-week. So this could be getting ready to break out. So this is one to keep an eye on for that. The next one we'll look at will be Prologis. And this is a REIT and pays dividends. And with the uncertainty in the market, the reason I put this one in here is institutions may flock to some safety, and dividends are considered safety. So just keep that in mind. 1.10% above the 13-week in an uptrend, 142.57 for a 52-week high, 52-week low of 96.23. We did have 1 week here where we were below the moving average, but that was right around here. It just broke barely below and then bounced right back up. If we look at the 30-week, we're 7.55% above the 30-week. So also tight. Our moving averages are in the right order, but they're tight together. The last one we will look at here is Seagate Technology, STX. Actually, let's change that to our 13. And you get to see an extra one there. That one was not one I was going to talk about, but you can look at that chart if you want. Alcoa Corp. Okay, STX. 0.38% above the 13-week moving average, 429.32 for a 52-week high, 66.73 for a 52-week low. We've been above the moving average for the 8 weeks prior to this week, and we're still above the 13 this week. We are, if we look at the 30, and we can see this has not broke since the beginning of the year last year, or around this time last year, it broke above, and it's stayed above, and right now it's pulled right back to it. The 30-week for Seagate Technology, we're 26.21% above that in an uptrend, but then been above it, and that's one of the stronger stocks. So STX, Micron, and Albemarle seem to be the strongest stocks we looked at. So those stocks have the most strength, but with that, if the 13 rolls and they break, they have a lot of downside to the 30-week, where the other ones are much tighter to their 30-week, and they don't have as much downside with institutions supporting that 30-week moving average. That's all I got for you. If you like that video and it was helpful, consider hitting the like and subscribe button, and thank you for watching.